Welcome to the Real Board Loft. I'm Trip Forman, and this is the Christenson Flat Tracker. The board I have right here is a 7'8" flat tracker, and I think we're going to jump right out of the blocks here and talk about the difference between a performance mid-length board, which is what this board is. It's what's called now a mid-length, and what a lot of people call a fun board. Because actually, I was riding this thing, and someone was like, "Oh, you're going to ride your fun board?" And so there is a difference. And basically, when you look at a fun board, all the fun boards that you see out there, they're typically plastic, no stringer, like real flexible, ultra durable. You can like drag them to the beach. You don't even need to rooftop them. But they're basically made just to be durable and good for beginners that are just taking off straight on waves, not actually going down the line. And once you stand up on the board, that's where all of the performance on a fun board ends. Where when you have a good mid-length board like this one, once you stand up on the board, that's actually where all the performance begins. It's a huge, huge difference in the way the board cuts through the water, the way it glides through the water, obviously the construction of the board, but two totally different boards. So calling every board above 7 foot a fun board would be like calling every board above 9 feet a long board, when there's other boards above 9 feet that aren't long boards, like guns or gliders, or different types of boards that aren't long boards. So this you're looking at is a mid-length board, and actually a high-performing mid-length board, and we're going to talk a little bit about it. So this board, and also, which is the Flat Tracker, and then also another board that Christenson makes called the Sea Bucket, are very similar. The Sea Buckets have a rounded pin and coming off the tail of the board, where this board has more of a squash tail or a square tail, like what a lot of longboarders would call it. And so knowing what we know about surfboards, this board is always going to be better in a flatter face wave. And that's what we found to be the case here in Cape Hatteras, where we have a lot of very punchy surf. We actually can lay claim to the smallest barreling wave. We actually have a lot of good barreling waves and medium and big barreling waves, but we can also lay claim probably to the world's smallest barreling wave, because even when it's like a foot here, it's still barreling. So what we found out with this board is this board definitely likes a flatter face wave. You can ride it in barreling surf, but the Sea Bucket's going to be a little bit more neutral in the water and like sit down in the water and sit down in that barrel, where this board definitely generates, just by changing the tail, generates a lot more speed and a lot more lift underfoot compared to the Sea Bucket. So this board tends to feel more neutral and more at ease, like in a sloping wave or a little bit more vertical wave. But once you get into the really pumping, like barreling surf, if you were to choose between this board and the Sea Bucket, you'd probably like the Sea Bucket a little bit better. Where this board comes into play is it's an incredible all-arounder that you can ride in ultra tiny surf, like that, where you actually need that lift, to medium surf that's real slopey, to bigger waves as well. And really have basically for a mid-length, like a one board quiver that would work with everything. The board itself has a nice sturdy build to it. Like it has some weight to it. It's not actually, for the performance level of this board, it's not designed to be super light. Actually having a little bit of weight is going to give you paddle momentum, and it's also going to give you glide and trim momentum across the wave face when you're straight lining. So as you're paddling the board, you could feel it really building up a lot of momentum and speed, and then on the wave, it carries that momentum into it. The thickness is kept in the center of the board and flattish deck, and then but the rails really come down quite a bit here, like where my hands are. But if you look at the tail, Chris really foils out the rails back here in the tail, and then also you look at it does have a square tail, but it's almost like a subliminal swallow built into it, because it's really, really thinned out in here. It's square across here, but it's really thinned out down into here, and then around the edges right here, just to give you more bite into the wave face. You look at the stringer, if you take a close look at the stringer, it's a cedar stringer, which is a little bit softer wood, which gives you a little bit of bend, and it's wider up front, and then it tapers through the tail. So really similar to like what you're seeing in the Nautilus. We kind of featured that stringer in the Christenson Nautilus. We talked about that stringer a lot, and what it does is it gives you a stiffer board up front, and also more strength where you need it, as far as if the board was ever going to break. And then it thins out in the back to give you a little bit more spring out of the tail in the turns when you're loading up those turns. When you look at the fin, this is another big thing about this board that's really important to talk about, because a lot of people will be like, oh, I got a fin, man, I got a fin, don't worry about it, I got a fin. But on this board, just like on the Sea Bucket, it's super important, like make or break, to have the right fin in the board, because a lot of the performance is coming out of that one fin. And I took the fin that I ended up with in my Sea Bucket and put it in this board, and I love that fin in the Sea Bucket. It was an incredible board. I'm going to basically ride that board until the end of time. So I figured, okay, this is a good starting point. I took that fin, put it in this board. Really good, lined up day, really super fun day. Bottom turned, the board just came to an absolute stop. And so what I had to do was, and I did that about 5 or 6 times, and I was like, there's something going on. Switched out fins, went with a smaller fin, basically dropped about a 1/2 inch in size, but also less area, like a thinner, like a narrower fin, like more high aspect through the tip. And like night and day, the board lit up. It didn't bog down out of the bottom turn, and it just was a lot more neutral, like in the pocket of the wave, and wasn't fighting and dragging that bigger fin. And I was kind of surprised that little of a difference in the fin would make that much of a difference in the board. But the board with the wrong fin was like an average so-so, like whatever board, and then you put the right fin in, and it completely lights up, and it's a keeper. So the moral of the story on this is, just like the Sea Bucket, don't over fin it. You want to make sure you're way better off being on too small of a fin than on too big of a fin. And so with this board being a 7/8, the fin I ended up with is a Captain Fin Company. It's a Brothers Marshall 7.5, and that was a good size. Even at my body size, I'm like over 200 pounds. That was a good size for this board, and you definitely do not want to over fin it. A lot of people ask what the deck patch is on this board. They always put, you can't really see it here just because the wax is all messed up from the wetsuits, but there's a darker outline right here. And then on all the boards, the clear boards, you can see it because there's actually a little bit of a green hue to the fiberglass. And what that is it's a Volon deck patch on top of the standard glass. And it gives it a little bit of extra color and detail, but it also really strengthens the board underneath your feet where you're going to be pounding on it. So super fun board. Like at my size, I'm able to not deep duck dive it, but like cheater duck dive it on the way out. So I was riding it a lot in beach breaks and being able to punch this thing out without having to turtle it. And just, super fun. You can get into the wave early. All of your surfing, like with a single fin, slows down, and you're able to just really draw out your lines more or fade more on your takeoff before you hook into the bottom turn. And it's just a little bit, obviously not even a little bit, it's a lot different feeling than riding a thruster, but super, super fun, and definitely not, as some people would say, a fun board. It's a Flat Tracker from Christenson, great all-around board. If I was going to take a surf trip and go to, actually, I take a surf trip here in Cape Hatteras every day when I go from my house to the beach, and I can put this in my car, which is what I did, and I basically rode it in everything during the time that we were testing it, and that would give me the confidence to take this board on a surf trip. If I wanted to ride this type of board, and I know it would ride in basically anything from total dribble to head high or overhead surf, and ride it really, really well. Again, like if I was going to a place that was going to be better surf and barreling, I think if I was specifically purchasing a board for that, I think the Sea Bucket would be better in the same length. But if I'm going to a place that's going to be a little bit mushy or a little bit windblown, not as much push to the wave, and there could be a barreling day every once in a while, this would definitely be a better bet because it does have more lift, more push, and more speed in that softer surf. So looking at the bottom shape of this board, there's a lot going on in the bottom shape that you might not be able to see in the video. So we'll tilt it up a little bit like this and start looking at what's going on. We talked about like the weight of the board and the glide and momentum that this thing carries. You look at the nose, and the nose has just straight V in the nose, like a belly to it. Like you're not really seeing any space in between the straight edge and the bottom once you rock it back and forth. But then you get back to about here, back to the Christenson logo, you're starting to see a little bit of a concave between the stringer and the rail. But again, the stringer's still deeper in the water than the rail. And here you're getting a little bit more concave. So in between your feet, like where you get like right about here, like with your back foot here, your front foot here, that's about where the deepest is right there. You're getting a lot of concave in between the stringer and the rail. Double concave here, double concave there, and then in the tail, it starts to it's more V and less concave, so it really rocks back and forth right there. What is all that doing? Carrying momentum. So you're building up that speed with the amount of foam that this board has with the rail line, the drive off the rail line, but you're never losing the speed. So you're always just continuously building momentum, and by having that V sit down in the water, that displacement V, you're pushing it through the water, and then it just keeps building more and more and more speed. And then by having that concave on both sides of the stringer, the deepest part of it in between your feet, when you're riding the board and you're up and riding, you're getting the benefits of both a V bottom, but then also the lift of a concave bottom as well. And that's really what separates this board, I think, from a lot of other boards in the size range, and especially from something as simplistic as a fun board, is that there's a lot of things going on both in the performance, but then also in the performance meaning concave lift and speed, but also in the displacement and the trimming and the gliding that this board can do as well. It's a Christenson Flat Tracker. You're going to see these boards in upper sixes, kind of like I'd say 6'8", 6'10" is kind of like where you start seeing them, all the way up to 8'6" or 9 foot. And again, square tail, mid-length, great all-around board, and definitely one you should check out. And the performance on this thing is insane. You go to the beach, you're in the water for 2 hours, and you have fun for 2 hours. It's a great board. Check it out. If you have any more questions on the Christenson Flat Tracker, you can give us a call at the shop, 252-987-6000, or you can check out our website, realwatersports.com/surfing. Thanks for tuning in.